Race to the Bottom, or the incredible story of the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest fall in an elevator. Our story starts out one foggy morning in New York City. Now, this is a story about a gigantic airplane, a B-25 bomber, running into the tallest building in the world at the time, which was the Empire State Building. No, this wasn't the Twin Towers. This was in July 28th, 1945. There, the famous Army pilot, William F. Smith Jr., was landing a B-25 that was being brought back to LaGuardia Base in order to get repaired. Unfortunately, the fog was so bad, air traffic controllers gave him directions, but with the fog he got confused and he turned the wrong way. That fateful decision and lowering his altitude ended up costing him his life. That day, the B-25 bomber, the biggest bomber in the Army Air Force at the time, ran into the Empire State Building, hitting between the 79th and the 80th floors. The fuel tanks burst and ruptured. The fuel saturated the building. Everything caught fire. And there, on that floor, was a lowly hotel operator, and her name was Betty Lou Oliver. Fortunately, she was not in the elevator that day, but one of the engines tore free from the wreckage and went hurtling through the building, where it fell out the other side, and she remembered being covered in a spew of hot burning oil. She was badly injured from the burning oil. Rescue workers immediately rushed to the scene. As a matter of fact, the New York Fire Department put out the tallest fire ever in New York history at the time. And they put the flames out. They extinguished them completely. The building wasn't structurally damaged. It didn't fall down. Yet Betty Oliver was wounded grievously. So those fire rescue workers immediately began to give her first aid. They put her on a gurney and they pushed her into the elevator shaft so that she could be sent down to the first floor and out to the hospital. Unfortunately, what they didn't realize is that wreckage from the plane had sheared through almost completely the elevator cable. So as she was in the elevator, waiting for the fires to be put out and the rescue workers to come take her down to the first floor, that frayed cable gave way. And the elevator began to plummet faster and faster and faster. A total of 1,000 feet. The elevator plummeted all the way to the bottom of the shaft. And it smashed down at the bottom. But Betty Oliver miraculously survived. There were a few things that happened to cause her survival. The cable coiled up as it was running down, and it landed on the bottom before the car. And that coiled up cable acted as a sort of buffer or spring, cushioning the fall of the elevator compartment. It was also one of the new, higher tech, nearly airtight elevator shafts. So as the elevator came down, the air began to compress and compress and compress because there was very little clearance between the elevator and the shaft, acting as a sort of air shock absorber, helping to cushion her impact. Nevertheless, she was badly wounded. She was already covered in burns. She broke her right leg. She broke her pelvis. She broke several other bones in her body, and she was covered in burns. They thought she wouldn't survive. At the hospital, a priest was sent to give her her last rites. But Betty smiled and cracked open one eye and said, "But Father, I'm a Protestant. Just hold my hand." But Betty Oliver was a fighter. As a matter of fact, it was her last day on the job. She was a newlywed and she was planning to move to Arizona to live a new life. But instead, she spent 5 months in the hospital recuperating from that fateful day. The day that a B-25 bomber ran into the Empire State Building covered in fog. The building didn't collapse. The fires were put out by the fire department. And Betty Oliver miraculously survived. Some people say she had a guardian angel, and others believe that we all do. You decide, and you be the judge. Put your comments in the section below. I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so we post more exciting content like the story of Betty Oliver.